The entire restaurant went silent the moment the elderly Japanese man stood up, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to speak, but no one understood a single word he said, and the confusion quickly turned into uncomfortable whispers and judgmental stares, as if he didn't belong there at all, except for one young waitress, who froze mid-step, her heart racing as she realized she might be the only person in the room who could change everything. Before we begin, if stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. It really helps our channel, Kindness Lights, grow and spread more meaningful stories like this one. It was a busy Friday night at one of the most luxurious hotels in downtown Chicago. The dining hall glowed with warm golden lights, polished silverware, and the soft hum of conversations. Guests in elegant attire filled every table, enjoying expensive meals and fine wine. Everything seemed perfect, until the doors opened. An elderly man walked in slowly, dressed in a traditional black kimono. His silver hair was neatly combed back, and his face carried a calm dignity, but also a quiet uncertainty. The host greeted him politely, but the moment the man began speaking, the confusion began. He spoke only Japanese, his voice soft but firm, as if he was used to being understood without needing to explain himself twice. The host tried to help, but the language barrier quickly created frustration. Other staff members gathered, each attempting to communicate using gestures and broken phrases, but nothing worked. Guests nearby began to notice. Some stared. Others whispered. A few even chuckled quietly, assuming the man was lost or out of place in such a high-end setting. Eventually, the host seated him at a table, but the tension didn't fade. The elderly man looked around, clearly trying to make sense of his surroundings, but also feeling the weight of being misunderstood. When a waiter approached to take his order, the same problem repeated. The man tried again to speak, his tone slightly more urgent now, but the waiter simply nodded awkwardly, pretending to understand before walking away. That's when Emily stepped in. Emily was a young waitress who had only been working at the hotel for a few months. She was known for being kind and attentive, but she usually kept to herself. As she carried a tray across the room, she overheard the man speaking, and something inside her clicked. She stopped. Slowly turned. And listened again. Without thinking, she walked over to his table. Her co-workers looked at her curiously, unsure of what she was doing. She took a deep breath, then spoke gently in Japanese. "Can I help you, sir?" The effect was immediate. The elderly man's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with relief. His posture straightened, and for the first time since entering the restaurant, he smiled. He began speaking quickly, his voice filled with emotion, explaining that he had been trying to order a simple meal but no one could understand him. Emily listened carefully, nodding with respect. She didn't rush him. She didn't interrupt. She simply gave him the one thing no one else had, her full attention. Within minutes, she translated his order perfectly and reassured him that everything would be taken care of. The tension around the table melted away, but something else began to spread across the room, curiosity. Guests who had been whispering before were now watching quietly, realizing they had misjudged the situation. Staff members who had felt frustrated now looked relieved, but also a little embarrassed. As Emily turned to leave, the man gently called her back. He spoke again in Japanese, slower this time. Emily listened, then nodded with a small smile. "He says thank you," she told the nearby staff. "And he says kindness speaks louder than words." The room fell silent again, but this time, it felt different. Warmer. Emily continued her work, making sure the man's dining experience was perfect. She checked on him regularly, spoke to him in his language, and treated him with the same care she gave every guest, if not more. By the end of the meal, the man looked completely at ease. The earlier tension had disappeared, replaced by quiet gratitude. When he finished, he stood up once more, but this time, the entire room noticed. He walked toward Emily, his step steady, his expression calm. He reached into his pocket and handed her a simple business card. Emily glanced at it briefly, and froze. The name on the card belonged to one of Japan's most successful business leaders. A billionaire known for his investments in international hotels, luxury brands, and global partnerships. Suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't just a confused traveler. This was a man who owned properties like this one. A man used to respect, yet who had walked into this room and been treated like he didn't belong, until someone chose kindness. The hotel manager, who had been watching from a distance, quickly approached, his face pale. He apologized repeatedly, bowing slightly in an attempt to show respect. But the elderly man simply raised his hand gently, stopping him. Then he turned to Emily. He spoke softly, and she translated for everyone. He says, "Tonight was not about luxury or status. It was about how people treat each other." And he says, she reminded him of what truly matters. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Before leaving,